Check, 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 check. Check, 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 check.
meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission. This is a special meeting, I guess, due to the fact that we were unable to meet on our regular time at the 4th of July weekend. But Bethany, will we move into August routine again then?
Yes, the next meeting is scheduled for August 2nd.
August 2nd?
Mhm.
Okay, good. All right. Could I have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Barkley is absent. Commissioner Weinberger?
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Here.
Commissioner Harlow is absent, but I did believe he said he was coming, so he might show up a little bit late. Commissioner Prisby?
Here.
Commissioner Elder?
Here.
Chairman Bonin?
Here. I'd like to welcome Chris Elder as a new member of our commission. Chris is a lifelong resident of Hinsdale, former trustee of the Village of Hinsdale. And he's been involved in many different aspects of our village and village government, and so we welcome him to serve on our commission.
Thank you, looking forward to it.
We're going to get an approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Do we have any comments, any changes or alterations that we need to talk about?
I did not.
I did not find any either.
None here.
Could I have a motion then to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the May 3rd, 2023 Historic Preservation Commission meeting minutes.
The June 7th.
Oh,
Maybe the
June 7th. Oh,
Second.
sorry, I was looking at the other. Okay, I move to approve the June 7th, 2023 minutes of the Historic Preservation Commission.
Second?
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Weinberger?
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Aye.
Commissioner Prisby?
Aye.
Commissioner Elder?
Aye.
Chairman Bonin?
Aye. Minutes are approved. The first item on our agenda tonight is a public hearing. Anybody that is going to speak at the hearing, would you please stand and be sworn in, please?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay. Morning, Bill. Sorry, we got a little in front of you there.
That's all right.
The next item on our agenda is a public hearing for case HPC 9-2023, consideration of properties for inclusion on the historically significant structures property list in the Historic Overlay District. This is the fourth list of properties brought forward for review by the Historic Preservation Commission. So we have a list as part of your packet. And if you look on Exhibit 4, which would be about page 6 in on your packet, it has the criteria. So may we have a motion to open the public hearing, please?
I'll move to open the public hearing.
A second, please?
Second.
Roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Weinberger?
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Aye.
Commissioner Harlow?
Aye.
Commissioner Prisby?
Aye.
Commissioner Elder?
Aye.
Chairman Bonin?
Aye, the motion carries. we've sworn in the members of the public that are going to be speaking. Bethany, do you want to give us a brief overview?
Of course. So this is our fourth round of properties, as you mentioned. We currently have about 68 properties that are officially approved, and if you guys remember, round 3 was just brought to the last board meeting, and it will be officially approved at the next board meeting. So this is our fourth list, so we pretty quickly should have 80-something properties, and we are still working with some additional homeowners on getting them on the next round as well. This round does have 4 properties, one of which is in Cook County, 3 of which are in DuPage County. If you remember correctly, Chairman Bonin already did point out that Exhibit 5, Exhibit 4 does include the criteria for inclusion on our list per the village code. So what we've been doing is I will flip through these 4 properties, give you a little bit of a summary on each of them, and we will go through and identify which criteria are met so that we can bring that recommendation to the village board. Our first item on the list is 11 Lansing Street. This property is in kind of a strange part of town where we didn't have, we have a lack of historic information. So the homeowners actually did go and work with the Historical Society. The Historical Society did a great job, which is included in your packet, of putting together a very well-documented history sheet. For anyone who's listening out there, they are happy to do this for anyone else when we do have a lack of information on a property. They did find that the house is believed to be built in 1929, and there was quite a bit of history in here of some of the families and the residents that may have lived here. They did find that one of the that the property is tied to an early businessman, William Ostrom, and his daughters were the first owners of the property. He was one of the founders of the St. John Congregation Church, which is, I believe, at 3724 North Washington, just up in Oak Brook. So there is someone that they did find who was also important in history of the region. And then they did a lot of research on all the people who lived there. And we did find that the facade, or at least the footprint of the house, is pretty true to form to what it was originally. You can kind of see per the Downers Grove Township Assessor's Office information, it did have some changes to the rear for a patio and a small addition, but the front of it is probably likely very original. So that is 11 Lansing.
Do the commissioners have any questions or thoughts on this?
I did have to look up where Lansing was. And
It is a small street.
It is a small street, and right to the north of it is Center Street, which is where we did have 2 Zooks. We only have 1 now, but
Well, one criterion would be number 3.
Seems to cover a lot.
Yeah, 3 covers a lot.
Yes.
I would also say 2.
Okay. All right, we have a list number 2 and number 3 as the criteria that is met. The next property on the list is 304 South Lincoln Street. This is a well-documented property already. It is a designated local landmark that was approved in 2005. And then per our reconnaissance survey in 1999 and our Town of Hinsdale survey in 2001, the property is considered significant. I did put a little summary here of some of the prior certificate of appropriateness approvals. They have done some work to add a side addition that does match the building, as well as for that garage that you can see there. And they've done some stuff with some changes to the front porch, as well as the screen porch in the back of the chimney and the side yard. This house, we believe, was built in 1875, and it's kind of a really unique house in that it has that Gothic revival style. So there's a ton of information that was included in here, obviously because it is a Hinsdale landmark, and some historic photos and research that was originally done. As well as some interior photos, I believe, that we normally don't see.
Yes.
And Bethany, I wanted to remind you that I'm going to need to recuse myself for this one. We did the addition in '99 and the series of additions since then, and are currently employed by the current owner for additional work.
So when we get to the motion portion, we'll do what we've kind of done in the past, where we'll do a separate motion then for this, for 304 South Lincoln, so that we can have that recusal.
Well, I would say criteria 3, for sure.
I would second that, but
Okay. Remember, it only needs to have one
Right.
list of criteria, so it's not a race to the top.
I used to hang out in that house when I was in grade school. Tim Smurge lived there.
Okay. The next house on our list is 317 South Park Avenue. This house is actually, has currently been on the market for some period of time, and I was informed that there potentially are some buyers interested in this house that would also like to take advantage of maybe some preservation incentive programs down the road, which is exciting. This house is also a designated landmark that was designated in 2002. It's considered contributing and historically significant. There was a pretty bad fire that happened to this house some years ago, a couple decades ago, and then they did do a ton of restoration work and an addition in 2002, which is when they were also landmarked. So also a ton of history on this house. It's estimated to also be built 1870, 1872, so it's quite old, and it's considered the John Frederick Stewart House with Second Empire architectural style. So a bunch of information included in here as well. And if you can kind of see some of, I believe there were some photos of the fire damage in a couple of these. Yeah, you can see on the survey sheet here, it's hard to tell, but you can see the tarp on the roof. So this was before they did all that work to it.
This is another one for criteria 3.
Agreed.
agreed.
All right. And then our final property for this list is 566 Woodland Avenue. This is a really exciting one to have. It is a Zook house, even though it might not quite look like it. It is Zook Spanish colonial revival style, so it's very unique, built in 1926. It did have a large addition that was put on it that is very, blends in with the architecture, I believe in the 90s. The village actually didn't have, believe it or not, a ton of information on this house. So the Historical Society did another one of the very deep dives into the history of the house. And the homeowner has been passed down some boxes of history that she let us look through and scan. So you can kind of see it's the Hinsdale Historical Society did, and this is included actually on their Zook walking tour app if anyone would like to download it. That you can kind of see they've added this addition that was very in line with that colonial revival style.
Well, I can see this is 2, 3, 5, and 6.
I agree.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And I think these interior photos, once again, that we don't get to see often, these were from when the property was, like the Realtor handbook, I think from when it was sold last, so. Okay. And with that, we can obviously have some commissioner comments or feedback if anyone wants to discuss anything else, and then we can close the public hearing or see if there's any members of the public that want to speak, and then, and make our motions.
I guess I just wanted to make one comment. The work that the Hinsdale Historical Society did to support these applications is fabulous.
Yes.
I mean, really, again, I think I said this at the last meeting, it's so much fabulous information. We have to figure out how to share it.
Yes. Yeah, and it's shocking how little sometimes the village has in their records. I mean, this was a Zook house, 566 Woodland is a Zook house, and we had hardly anything on file for it. Because remember, I keep telling you guys, everything east of county line, everything gets a little spotty.
Yeah.
So it was really wonderful that they helped us out with this.
Can we have a motion to close the public hearing?
I move to close the public hearing.
Second?
We have a motion to close the public hearing for case HPC-9-2023. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Weinberger?
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Aye.
Commissioner Harlow?
Aye.
Commissioner Prisby?
Aye.
Commissioner Elder?
Aye.
Chairman Bonin.
Aye. Motion carries.
So based on, I think, what we had heard earlier, if there's no further discussion from the commission, we can do one combined motion for the three properties, and then we'll keep 304 South Lincoln separate, which would, per your packet, we would go with situation number 3 in there, the option for the refusal.
John, do you want me to make a motion?
Yeah, and it'll be for the three properties. I'd like to make a separate motion.
Yeah, but, right, not 304, so, like,
Correct.
yeah.
That'd be fine, but
So I'll move to recommend to the village board approval of the following properties for inclusion on historically significant structures property list in the historic overlay district under case HPC-9-2023. The addresses are 11 Lansing Street, 317 South Park Avenue, and 566 Woodland Avenue.
second, please.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Weinberger?
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Aye.
Commissioner Harlow?
Aye.
Commissioner Prisby?
Aye.
Commissioner Elder?
Aye.
Chairman Bonin.
Aye. Motion carries, and now a motion for 304 South Lincoln, please.
I move to recommend to the village board approval of the following property for inclusion on the historically significant structures property list in the historic overlay district under case HPC-9-2023, 304 South Lincoln.
A second, please.
Second?
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Weinberger?
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Aye.
Commissioner Harlow?
Aye.
Commissioner Prisby?
Abstain.
Commissioner Elder?
Aye.
Chairman Bonin.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay.
Bethany,
So now
how many houses does that bring us up to now? Was it-
So this list would still need to go to the village board. As of right now, I believe we have 68 officially approved, and if you remember, the last list had, I think, 13 or 14.
Right.
That should be approved on August 15th, and then these will move forward and probably be approved in September.
Okay, so we're around 80.
We're gonna be close to 80 pretty soon. And I've got a couple more in the queue, but we're trying to group a couple of them together at a time. And we've been very busy with our preservation incentive applications. So we have 2 coming in August, and we do have 1 tonight.
Great, thank you.
So do you want a motion now to the board?
I think we're good. I think we
You're
can
good now?
move on to the public meetings section of the.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, we now, item 5, the public meetings. We have before us 2 cases, the first being HPC-11-2023 for 137 North Clay Street. preservation incentive for historically significant structures property, request for alternative bulk zoning regulations, building permit fee waiver, and expedited processing. Talking about construction of a deck, a pergola, and a patio. Would you like to address us? Please state your name for the commissioners.
My name's Katie Knoble. I'm here on behalf of my clients, Sarah and Chad Irwin. They live at 137 North Clay. We've been working on this deck and pergola for almost a year. And their family really doesn't have a great place to gather, hang out outside. We all know that outdoor space has become the new indoor space. And so their request is that you reduce the side yard setback to allow them 18 more inches on a deck pergola situation, so they can have a furniture arrangement with a patio, so that they can have a private outdoor space in their side yard.
So I have a question.
Yes.
Is the distance between the lot line and the existing patio,
It's
what is that?
7.19.
Okay, so
And
it's
we're
all-
asking for it to be 6.
Okay.
Are you waiting for me, Shannon?
You've been awfully quiet.
Okay, I'll start. I actually think this is a great example of why we have zoning incentives now as part of the HOD. Just looking at the floor plan, you know, from the wall to the end of the deck is 9 feet 10 inches proposed. And you start taking away the incentive, essentially 1 foot 2.5, right? You start ending with a deck area that really isn't very livable. And you can't put a couch out there, you can't put a side table. They're borderline whether they can make that work right now, depending on the furniture they select.
Right.
But this at least gives them the opportunity to do that and still maintain a backyard behind the house between there and the garage. And I think this is just again, a great example of why we put this in place. And
So-
I think that the trellis, the arbor work, and the deck work all looks in context to the house, so I had no issues with this.
I agree.
As someone that works on a lot of old homes in town, I think this is a very good example of why the incentives are important. Because I think if you don't give people a reason to save the old homes, they won't. And my clients are so passionate about this house. They have a woman who grew up there's phone number, and she talked to her for 2 hours about the house and the history of the house, and they love that.
Yep, I agree with Jim and Shannon.
I think in addition to all the other reasons stated, the fact that it's an open-air structure, it's pergola, you know, it's, although it falls within the bounds of what we are allowed to do anyway, you know, it's open and airy, it's not even a solid wall.
Right.
So it's not exterior wall, seems to slam down.
The deck that's there now is literally falling apart. Like, they don't even want people on it. And they can't put furniture on it because it's so small.
Cool, yeah.
Yeah, the history that you submitted was fabulous.
Yeah. I told Sarah Irwin that she is an A+ student. She's a kindergarten teacher, so it goes hand in hand.
Yeah, awesome.
I'm fine. I don't have any objections either. So,
Any further questions or comments?
I mean, I like the effort that they're trying to maintain the consistency and the style of the home.
Can I have a motion, please?
I move to approve case HPC 11-2023, 137 North Clay Street, preservation incentive for historically significant structures property, request for an alternative bulk zoning regulations, building permit, fee waiver, and expedited processing.
Second, please.
I second it.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Weinberger?
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Aye.
Commissioner Harlow?
Aye.
Commissioner Prisby?
Aye.
Commissioner Elder?
Aye.
Chairman Bonin.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Next case before us, HPC -12-203, 133 South Park Street, a preliminary application for a certificate of appropriateness to demolish a single-family home and construct a new single-family home in the Robbins Park Historic District. Hello, Patrick.
Hello, how are you?
So this is preliminary, so we're,
Correct. You do not need to make a motion on this, and this is the opportunity to provide some preliminary design ideas or feedback for this house. And it's my understanding this house was on the market for quite some time, and I don't know if the applicant has any additional information to share.
Yes, and from what I understand from the owner, Victoria Jiang of Bona Homes, have been through the house, some serious water damage on the inside, 8-foot ceilings, rough basement, so kind of the, standard protocol of renovation work. So, going into this process, knowing it was in the historic district, really took a look at that existing facade and tried to come up with a scheme that not just worked for program for the floor plan, but also kind of gave us the same language in the basic building form with the heavy left side gable. Really kind of like the existing covered porch on this as well, that kind of cantilevered effect, and very flat facade. So our new house was trying to be as sensitive to that existing house while still maintaining, albeit a bit different program. I suspect that this existing house was not a shingle style, just based at looking at some of the flares on the hipped roof. It feels like it was probably an arts and crafts style or Tudor house originally, and subsequently was probably shingled over at some point. So our new house we're proposing would be an arts and crafts style with some fieldstone, slate roof, and some semi-transparent wood stain siding on it as well.
I
How
have,
old is the original home?
I don't know.
Okay.
according to the past survey that was done on this house, it is believed that it was built in 1924 or sometime around then.
1924?
1924, correct.
I appreciate that you did work to give the look, the shape, for no better word, of the new home to be similar to the existing home. The streetscape, visually, it looks very similar. But I do think there's an awful lot of windows.
Is there? Boy, I held back on this one.
Really? You can see right through the home.
That's actually the front entry vestibule that you see in the center core, and there's the staircase that goes up to the second floor in that room.
So that area, it's not all fenestration across The place where you see the two little people sitting, that is not window, correct?
No, it is not. That's a
Okay.
little built-in bench that we're doing, like a carpenter built that you
Okay.
would see of the era. And then there's a stone parapet wall that comes off the front of that porch. And then we've done a cantilevered beam on a bracket that you see on the left side there. Again, not exactly the same as the existing house, but really reminiscent of that deep set cantilevered front porch.
Patrick, I want to make a comment. I'm not trying to be arbitrary. First of all, I appreciate the fact that you appreciate the fact that we appreciate seeing streetscapes.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's taken us a while to get to that point, all of us, but your effort in doing so is appreciated.
Good.
So we can see how these designs fit into the block. The comment I would make to it, and again, I understand this is preliminary. I've known that house, I know that block, quite a while. When I look at this, you're really selling when you show me this house with all this greenery.
Yes, that's true. We just didn't have time to get the neighboring houses in the rendering.
That's all right, but even down in your streetscape here, there's no way that the proposed house is to scale with the houses on either side. I mean, not even close, which would lend one to think, you know, that this is all sort of spaced out evenly, when in fact, if you were to take the time or had the interest to bring these to scale as you were doing the streetscape, this would look entirely different. So to me, it's a little disingenuous to be painting this out as being out in the middle of the country with the apple trees.
And I would say no malicious intent in that. We have an
Yeah.
intern doing this, that just getting this
Yeah,
far is
it's
a
okay.
struggle, so.
Again, I don't mean to be obstreperous with you, but for the uneducated eye, one would think that all this fits very evenly in a neighborhood, when in fact there are all different widths and sizes of houses on
I
this
see
lot.
what you're saying, right.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, my concern frankly is that the house to the far right, the stone house, and then the one to the other side of this house, those houses always look like bookends to me. And they were begging for something in the middle that looked a little different,
Very
in my
good.
opinion. So to that end, you know, what you're proposing here, to me, is some relief, frankly, from this row of stone mini castles down Park Street. So I'm not being critical, I'm just saying that it looks like you're selling me on something, and in fact, it's just a lack of the accurate impression.
Scale. Got it.
Yeah, right.
Understood.
I mean,
John?
even the house, the second house over from the left-hand side. So, do we gain by worrying about scale and this kind of thing? Maybe, maybe not. But I think it has to be, I think the house we're proposing here, this does not give a good impression of what that streetscape will look like if that house was built. It just,
And frankly, I think ours is probably overscaled in that, in a decent percentage, because our lot isn't nearly as big as these
Correct.
adjacent
yeah,
lots. So,
exactly.
Yeah,
'Cause
understood.
yeah, so I guess my comment would be that for the uneducated eye, we would all benefit from having a little truer feel on scale and presence when we're looking at
You got it.
what the streetscape
Okay.
might look at. And again, I appreciate the fact that you appreciate, we've talked about this many times.
We're working on it.
Yeah, I get it.
And John, having done some of this myself, I mean, it's really hard to get that
Yep.
scale
Yep,
quite right, especially when you're dealing with the rendering.
yep.
To me, it's more about the forms and the rhythm, and I can make, at least for myself, the adjustment in my mind as to what that size would be. And knowing what Patrick has drawn, I can foresee this being actually smaller
Yeah, definitely.
than the houses on either side, so,
Which, to my point, Jim,
yeah.
if, this is where I have a problem, when we're going from the house that's there,
Mm-hmm.
looking at the house that's being
Right.
proposed. This has no no relationship to the real scale of that house.
Yeah, it looks like it's pulled forward, quite honestly.
It's also probably 20% bigger,
Right.
and it won't be.
It won't be, no,
Right.
you're correct.
Right.
You're saying that the houses on either side of that one are larger than the one he's proposing?
No, I'm saying that this is the house that's there.
Right,
This is the house that's being proposed.
right.
This house here is not gonna be any bigger than that house.
Uh-huh, okay, I see. Oh, I see your point, okay.
See my point?
Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah,
lot is 75 feet wide,
yeah.
you're governed by FAR, so this is the house that's going to be taking the place of that
Sure.
house. But we have it portrayed as being.
Yeah, I know, that's what I was trying to
Right,
feel,
right,
like,
okay.
that's a, it looks huge, okay. Yeah, I see your point, yeah, when you look at the bottom, it seems now you can see the proportions better.
Patrick, I would echo Shannon's comments that I appreciate that there was, some effort to sort of maintain to some degree the overall shape, front facade of the house in that regard. And some of the elements that you've included, this is the last original house on that side of Park. And the entire block now is
Yeah.
gonna have turned over. But it doesn't have some of the monumental quality of some of the others, and I think that's appreciated.
Good.
So, thank you for that. I'm glad it's not like the one that's two from the left.
Yeah. Yeah, some unfortunate, but future renovation work we can work on.
Right. Patrick, I also appreciate the nod to the existing home and to some of the other elements that are on that block. I do like the fact that you picked up the dormers and the roof and didn't gable them, right? I think that's a nice change from what's there, and still small enough that you kind of pick up on the whole block, but it's not overwhelming like it is on some of the other houses, so I thought that was a nice touch.
Good.
I always love the built-in bench on the porch. I think those are fun, and I think it'll be great at this location for sure.
Yep.
And there's a lot to like about this plan.
Good. I'm glad you like it. Had a client that was very receptive to the whole idea of this house kind of slipping into that, position and being relevant to the street. And as you guys know, sometimes we have clients that aren't interested in that. So
Right, yeah.
we're thankful we got a client that was interested.
I think this would be a good solution.
I got a
The house
question.
that's there is not livable. I mean, I know that house.
Yeah.
So it's not a question of fixing it up. I mean, something's gonna replace it, so.
There we go.
Got a question. So I'm looking at the streetscape, looking, a lot of the homes have these dormers, and they have like peak gables on their dormers, and it's proposed here that's flat. Would, my thought is if you made them peak, it would have a better blend throughout on the dormers instead of a flat roof?
The flat roof is more indicative of this style, and as Jim was just pointing out, that he kind of appreciated that, albeit that there's three of them, they're not peaked to
Is that what you said?
kind of
Peak?
relate,
You don't like peak?
Yeah.
but not contrast.
Why?
I would have been looking at that saying, oh, another row of peaked dormers on that
Yeah.
block. To John's point even earlier, I think it's nice having something that's there that breaks up the rest of the row of houses there, but still at least nods to the fact that they're on the block. It's part of the architecture on that streetscape. And I actually like the fact that it's different from the other houses from a roof standpoint.
I agree.
Yeah, my opinion was that it would blend in more with the streetscape, that's why, but
I'm just thinking it looks
I'm
more
the
like.
minority here then.
Yeah. I just think it looks more like row housing then, in some
Yeah,
regards, so.
yeah.
So you don't like row houses then?
Not in the Robbins Park District now.
No, I mean, I think it breaks up that block of Park Street nicely. When we saw the two that are built on either side of it, they look like bookends to me. And then the behemoth to the north. So I think
I
you're on the
it's-
right track.
I think it's got some nice architectural elements, but it is classy and I don't want to say simple because that's not the case, but there's an elegance to the simplicity of parts of the architecture that I think lend itself really well for the district, though.
Good.
Thank you.
Well, it sounds like the house, the existing house is too far gone to save anyway, so.
Right.
I think if it's coming down out of necessity, that this is a very reasonable and attractive approach to replacing it.
Good.
So we're not voting on this. This is a preliminary.
Correct. And they will now start submitting for building permits, take any, suggestions that you guys
Right.
provided and move forward with the building permit phase. And then they'll come back, once they have zoning compliance, with the final detailed plan packet.
Right.
And then you guys will vote on it.
So if I may thank them again for honoring what you've heard us lament about for how many years, Patrick? About-
It's a process.
About getting a view of things before you go to final press.
You bet.
Yeah. And Howard and Victoria also. I mean, we're here to help. And hopefully we are helpful. But we have to have the opportunity. And we appreciate the opportunity to be heard. So
Okay, great.
thank you very much. Look forward to having you come back before us.
Okay, we'll see you in a little
Thank you.
while.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Do we have any public comments? Do we have any new business to talk about?
Of course we do.
What might it be?
That's why I'm here, John.
Uh-oh.
Much to Jim's chagrin. No,
Let me lean back, Tom.
yeah. Just one thing, this came up in a Hinsdale 150th committee meeting yesterday. I see that our village manager is also sitting in the audience. We are moving ahead with fundraising plans to raise funds from businesses and the public generally for the restoration of the Chippendale roof railing on this building. Also, the replacement of the patio on the front of the building. Those plans to some degree are going to depend on how much money is raised. But both of them right now seem to be in pretty good shape, and we think we have a pretty good fundraising program in place that we're going to be ready to launch full bore once we get to the latter half of August and move into the Labor Day and people are back. So that's all good. One of the additional things that has been brought forward is a proposal to, in one way or another, try to fund the replacement of the Carillon and to restore the bell, which are in a cupola at the top of this building. You're all familiar with those. That's the symbol that we use on our letterhead and so on. The bell was forged for when this building opened. It was dedicated on 4th of July, 1929. So it's almost 100 years old. The bell has not worked in more than 50 years. The Carillon was installed up there in 1973 for the village's centennial celebration. It too has not worked, although for a far shorter period of time that hasn't worked. I think it's something like 15 to 20 years now. The Carillon is a piece of equipment that is no longer supported, repaired, et cetera. It's 50 years, 25 years at least out of date. It's 50 years old. So there are folks who have been spearheading this effort, primarily from the Plan Commission. They're all Plan Commission members, commissioners, to try to do that. Why am I saying all this? One, just to bring everyone's attention to these efforts, but two, Bethany, you had included some information for us, I believe, in your latest email that talked about the remaining budget that the HPC had for this fiscal year. I've looked at too many emails recently, but my recollection, it was somewhere between $6,000 and $7,000,
I believe it was closer to 5,000.
closer to $5,000. Okay. In order to get the bell working again, we would need about $6,700. So I don't know that now is the right time, but I just wanted to bring it up for consideration, whether we might consider, since we are the Historic Preservation Commission, allocating the remainder of our fiscal year budget to the degree that we can toward the cupola project of getting that bell to ring again. We may need some of those funds for public hearings for public meetings going forward, I don't know. But we don't currently plan to fundraise for the bell and the carillon. So I can say more about that if people want to hear it, but you may not. But I just wanted to bring that up as a possibility that we might, if we did that, it might mean that we would push off the funding for the gateway signs until next year. Personally, I don't see a problem with that. We've installed all of our toppers in the Robbins district. The gateway signs will be nice to have at some point. But I think that if we can move ahead on actual restoration and preservation for this building, that would be a good use of those funds. So I just wanted to bring that up for people's thought as we move forward this year.
I guess a comment that I would make, we're on a calendar year now, correct?
Till January till December, yep.
Yeah, so we're basically halfway through a year. We've used basically half of our budget. What have we done with our budget to wit? How much of our budget is necessary to have the hearings that we're going to continue
Right.
to need to have with our incentive program?
So one of the things that we can do after this meeting is we'll look into the budgeted items. The HPC is approved for $10,000, I believe, this
Right.
year. And what that particular money that has about the 5,000 left, half of it, I think maybe a little less, I'd have to go back and look. That's used for the court reporters. That's used for actually a lot of our historic preservation incentives now of if we have to record things with the county or if we put notices in the Hinsdalean. That's what that money's for. One of the things that we just did, which is going to be under agenda item 8B, so no spoilers, but we'll get there. We did just hire, as you know, I've been trying to figure out what we're going to be doing with the Robbins Park Historic District gateway signs, and we did just hire Parvin Klaus to do the plans for that signage. So originally, we were going to try to do more of a design build. Costs obviously are through the roof right now in terms of construction and signage. So we have kind of split this up where instead of, I believe there was roughly $30,000 approved in that separate fund, which is different than the Historic Preservation Fund. We were going to move forward with trying to do it all. It wasn't feasible, so we have just hired someone to help us now with the design itself. Then what we can do is once we have that design, then we can go out to bid or figure out the next steps. And that would be for next year anyway. So what we can do after this meeting is talk about how that budget looks and where we're at with that, and we can follow up for sure. There may be some other budgeted items that we're not aware of either, so we can follow up after.
I would support this. It would be nice to know what we need to use our money for until December 31st, but I think it makes sense.
It just occurs to me that a couple of years ago, we used our budget to help the Historical Society launch a program. And we're going to need more and more hearings. And I'm not aware of us spending our money this year on anything. The
No.
toppers were not this year, were they?
No, that 5,000 that we probably have spent have been just for court reporters, Hinsdalean ads. There may have been some things, obviously, with our new program that were
Right.
that were part, but
But
you're
it's
right.
been-
I believe the toppers were of last year's budget.
Right, so we've used half our budget this year during half of the year. We're just doing administerial things.
Yep.
We really have no budget to do any projects. We're just funding our own operations because of needing ads and court reporters and things of that nature, which, to me, makes it very obvious we need a larger budget. So glad you could come. But seriously, because in years past, we have not used our budget for administrative things like that. And now here we are just chewing it up.
Yeah.
So,
Do-
Since I'm here, we'll be moving into our budget process probably early September. And certainly when we built the budget, it was based on historical numbers and the program
Sure.
wasn't in place. So we can look at that and to keep in mind, there's the operating budget and then there's the capital budget. So
Right.
these the signs that we were talking about is
Right.
in the capital budget.
that's in the capital.
Yes, so that's a separate funding mechanism.
Yeah,
So, as I had shared with Commissioner Harlow yesterday, that if it were the desire of this group to reallocate those funds for a different purpose this year, it would be something that you would make a recommendation to the village board to say, instead of doing X project, which is the 4 signs, that you would rather that this be allocated to this piece. And so you could contemplate that as a group.
okay.
Okay.
But I mean, if we run out of, for instance, if we put $5,000 towards the Bell or the Carolina or whatever, and yet we still have to have hearings, then do we just go over our budget?
Well, the bell would come out of the capital fund.
That'll come
so
out
it's
of cap.
separate. The operating would we're not going to touch that for this purpose. We'll keep the operating funds.
Okay.
And if you were to go over the operating funds because you have more hearings, we do have some contingency in the budgets to, for when those happen, for those types of events.
I'm
So,
just,
yeah, we can blow through the budget is what she's saying.
I'm sorry?
So we can blow through the budget is what Kathleen's saying.
Well, I did not
Sorry to
say
do
that. You may have interpreted it, but no. So we budget very conservatively based off prior years, and there's just two, it's the operating budget and the capital. And so the bells would be something, whatever, it's going to last more than 20 years. I mean,
Yeah.
it all fits into that. The railing, it all fits into a capital item. And then you'd say, well, what's happening to our entryway signs, right? Because we're going to use that money for this. Then what we would look at doing is having that programmed in a future year in the CIP, subject to the board approval. But these are things for you all to think about and what the priority is. And, you know, you could split the baby if you want and do 2 entryway signs and have the remaining balance. I mean, there's all those types of things that you all could think about if you were so inclined to move in that direction.
I guess I'm just having a problem. And I've never been aware in prior years of ever discussing the fact that our budget was funding all our hearings and notices and things. Because we've always had hearings and notices, and probably will have more going forward than we're used to with the incentive program, but I never recall talking about it. Like the year we gave $10,000 to the Historical Society, we gave them our budget. What did we pay with the hearings in it? How did we pay for those?
I have to look at that. That's when Chan was here, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I have to go back and look at that. We might not have spent all of it during that time frame, but we can go back. And
I mean,
give you-
I don't need to, not trying to split the baby, but if it's a consideration that we have to take up each year, kind of seeing what we think is gonna come before us and how many hearings we're gonna need and things like that.
No, we take care of that for you as part of the
you do.
budget process. That's what the Community Development Department does. That's why we don't bring it necessarily to you. We do a predictive modeling over the previous years, but to your point, when we built the budget last year, we weren't anticipating the additional hearings, so that's something we're gonna factor in.
Yeah.
So you might have had, just using a number, 10,000 this year. We may find that next year, based on what's going on, we may have to go up to 12,000 or 13,000. But that's what we do, so.
Okay.
How much is budgeted for the entryway signs?
It was
30,000?
Yes, and that's what we have to go check after the meeting, because I know it was part of like a wayfinding and economic development signage capital item. So we have to go back and make sure it wasn't grouped in with other stuff and what that amount is right now. But I think it was roughly 30,000. Yes.
I looked at it earlier today.
Okay.
But I'll say, I believe it's 30.
Yes.
And did we have to pay for the sign on the tollway?
No.
That was
didn't.
separate.
Okay. Well, bottom line, we don't want to be wasteful in money, but we'd like to have some funds each year that we could do some project work with and not just pay for court reporters.
Right.
So however that occurs.
Yeah, and we can make that, so the capital plan is the piece that we would be looking at, so we're building that right now. And so it's a good decision point for everybody, and that we would build it in, and then we will discuss that actual CIP with the board probably at the end of August, early September. So there's some time to have this discussion and to think about a recommendation. And then if Bethany collects from you future projects that you're interested in doing that are specifically historic preservation related, then that's something that the board would make a policy decision when they weigh it against all the other needs in the village.
So Kathleen and Bethany, just so I'm clear, let's call it $5,000 that you're saying is remaining in our budget. Is that both capital and operations? It's just capital?
That's just the operating.
Just
That's just
operating.
the operating?
Yes.
Correct.
The capital is a separate fund.
And
And that's what we believe has roughly that 30,000 that we're gonna check on.
okay,
And that was what was for the original Robbins Park Historic Gateway signs.
right. Okay.
Which, like I said, we have just taken some money out of it. I know that for sure, because we did hire Parvin Klaus to start with putting together our signage plans. So those should be coming for you guys to start weighing in on shortly. But that's just for the design, so it obviously wasn't going to be the full amount that we had originally thought.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Kathleen.
I actually just came by because I was working late and saw there was a meeting and wanted to hear the discussion, so that's helpful.
Thank you.
Okay, any other new business we need to talk about?
Don't have any.
Old business. Amendments to Title 14, status update.
I have no update from a staff side.
Okay.
It was, in terms of Title 14, and everything else we're doing, I was thinking on my walk to the meeting today, it would be really nice, we've talked about this many, many times, to have some piece of marketing, because I walk by houses that I think people don't know that they could be applying to be in the historic overlay district. And if I could be walking around and just put a little brochure in their mailbox, I think we have a great start. I mean, we've got some fabulous momentum, but there's so many houses that maybe aren't paying attention.
Well, ownership changes.
Exactly. Just
I
so,
I will say, though, the Hinsdalean, I think, has gotten behind this. I've talked to
Absolutely.
Pam at length and was very pleased to, I mean, Pam's always liked old houses. That's a fact. But we had a chance to talk the other day for about an hour. And it's good reading. People are responding to her about the articles. I'd like to think perhaps we're turning a little corner here, so that people can start to see the merit of maintaining traditions in a lot of our heritage. So, but again, we've always stated the educational component is the one that's been lacking, and whatever we can do, I'd rather err to the excess on it than hold back. So,
Door hangers, door up.
So based on the discussions at our last meeting, I do have a little bit of an update, but it's not a huge one. I did start engaging with our part-time social media and marketing person at the village, and we have kind of started talks on how to help promote this program a little bit better based on our talks last time. So I know I need to send her some stuff. If you guys see anything that you think is a great idea of how we can market this better, not just on social media, Hinsdale, or maybe even flyers to put in people's mailboxes, I'm happy to forward those on. I've just started discussions with her, so we're gonna try to formulate a strategy, and hopefully we'll have some more reporting on that shortly.
I think once school starts again and we get past Labor Day, we should consider having another Saturday morning coffee here at the Memorial Building for a number of reasons. Number one, you're talking about patios and improvements and things that will be going on and asking people for money. I'm sure there are a lot of people who have not spent any time in this building. They drive by it and nothing more. But when we had our meeting years ago on landmarking and assessment freeze and brought Susie Benjamin in to speak, and we probably had 80 people here for coffee and donuts. And I'd be willing to have us host a Saturday morning discussion group, topic to be determined, but basically around incentives, and it can be the monetary side of things or the aesthetic side, or talking about how to find the craftsmen to do the work, all kinds of things that can be discussed that would probably be of worth to a lot of people in the village that are, obviously there's interest, you're getting applications. The next step is, where do they go to get it fixed?
Right.
You know, who does that kind of work? And
Yep.
we all know today, when you go out for bids on construction things today, they're all over the place. For good reasons and bad reasons, but it would be if I were a homeowner looking at a major project today and didn't have the background on how to get good bidding, I probably wouldn't do the project. You don't have any faith in the way numbers come in. So, to that end, if it were a seminar on a Saturday morning or a series of seminars or something in the fall, I think that would be something our commission would gladly orchestrate. And it isn't a big budget item. I mean, it's coffee and donuts.
Right.
We can be the speakers or bring people in that we know. You know, we don't have to pay for a specialist. We are.
We could even invite some of the homeowners that have gone through some of the projects, talk
Sure.
about their experience. And I did speak with our part-time marketing person about, you know, once we have some before or after photos to show people, that'll make it a lot easier as well. You can physically see what this program did. It's just right now we don't have an after photo, but we are going to start working on putting something together. And we can definitely start talking about putting a program together in the fall.
Yeah, I think it'd be good. Even this little project today that Katie was talking about on Clay Street. I mean, those people are going to enjoy their house more because of 18 inches that was allowed to let them design their little pergola.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Bethany, one thing that occurs to me in terms of marketing, because we've talked about this with the 150th fundraising effort, is once we have some language and possibly a photo or not, we might consider doing a buck slip that goes with the village water bill. The price of that is not high. The village does that occasionally. It's just that slip of paper that comes with the water bill. I think the most recent one was asking for solicitations for the Independence Day Parade.
Be careful, they just raised the water bill.
Well, they did. Thanks, Chicago. In any case, that's a non-social media way, and it's conceivable to me that, you know, there's some people that pay attention to village social media, but there are probably a fair number who do not.
Yep, correct.
And it's a mailing that already goes out, and it goes to every pretty much, every address in the village.
It doesn't
So-
cost you more to put another flyer there.
Right, yeah, so you're not paying additional postage. Yes, it'll go to some people, a significant number of whom, for whom it's not relevant, but it would also go to every house where it might be relevant.
It's a good idea.
Just a thought.
Sixth Street, Bill, as long as you're talking.
So I'm a little out of my depth here. All I know is that my wife yesterday had a conversation with Al Diaz, who was out looking at Sixth Street again. And my understanding is that the village is potentially currently considering putting forth a proposal that Sixth Street would be done in asphalt from Garfield to County Line. It would be narrowed, but that antique pavers would be used for the intersections at Park, Elm, and Oak. So it's not the least expensive possibility, which would be to do asphalt the entire way, but it certainly does not maintain or improve the historic character of that street. So I think there are going to have to be some further discussions. I have a couple of thoughts on that. One of them is I know that there's at least some discussion of ARPA funds and whether those are being applied for this project. Laurel also believes that there are some state funds that may be available that are along a historic preservation angle, but I don't know details about that. Another possibility that has come up is that, there was, I forget the official term, I think of it of an assessment that was created for the entire woodlands when that work was done.
The water gardens.
Yes. Perhaps that might be approached. And it's conceivable to me that there may be residents, particularly those who live on Sixth Street, who might want to contribute. My hope is that all of these avenues can be explored. The street has been there for more than 100 years. There's nothing, I don't think, magical about having to do this right now. I know that with Flag Creek, we need to continue and by a certain date, which I believe is coming up in the next few years, finish the separation of storm and sewer. So we don't have endless time to do it, but even if we were able to husband funds for 2 years rather than for one, to get to where we need to be. So I think there's a lot underway. I would not want the village board to approve any plan without exploring all of those possibilities, including talking with the residents and whether the residents might be willing to engage in some way. But I don't want us to be hasty about approving something at the board level without really exploring all the possibilities of what we might do there. One person's opinion, but you've heard me say this before, I do not believe that when we talk about preservation, and here we're talking about a village-owned asset, that we should be doing any less than preserving the street, which is in a historic district. Obviously, I would say the same for the remainder of First Street. I would say the same for the stretch of North Park on the north side of the tracks. I think that's the extent of what we have in terms of brick streets in the village today, yes. But the one block where the chairman lives of First Street that was rebuilt, my understanding at that time was that was the model of what we were planning to do going forward. It's not inexpensive, we all understand that. But if we are really interested as a village in preservation, I don't see how you take out 4 blocks of brick street and replace them with asphalt. That just does not make any sense from a historic preservation perspective at all. So I'm going to get off my soapbox, but I hope that we can make sure that the board proceeds cautiously with this, and we explore all the avenues and not just jump into something.
Has there been any communication from the village to the residents on that street?
No, just the verbal
Okay.
communication that we've had so far. And I mean, and Laurel was appreciative of the fact that Al was upfront with her and said, this is what we're currently looking at. They do have preliminary numbers for these different options. It came as a surprise that part of this village proposal apparently is going to be to narrow the street down, so that is, yes, by a couple feet is my understanding.
Why?
So Sixth Street, if you look at the original Robbins Park layout, Sixth Street was originally envisioned as having a very narrow median down the center of it, which you can see in the plan. That obviously wasn't done, but I think that explains why the street is so wide relative to, say, 7th Street on the south or 5th Street on the north. I don't know how it compares with First Street, but it is wide. I mean, it raises other questions in terms of everyone's driveway aprons, most of which are brick also, and it's kind of a nightmare from that perspective. So that's all I know about that, except to say that when the village redid Park Avenue between 6th and 7th a couple of years ago, the contractor that the village used did not do a good job in handling the aprons. Then we have a driveway on that side as well. A bunch of guys showed up one morning, ripped everything up, tossed all the bricks into a pile. When it came time to put it back, they did their best, but of course they came up short. We have a large pile next to our garage of things that didn't fit, and yet,
One point they fit.
yeah, at one point they did, but they didn't bother to just sort of take it out piece by piece, put it here, and then put it back the same way, nor photograph it. So,
Yeah.
lesson learned on that. That was kind of a travesty.
And that's something that, now that you're saying that, I mean, I don't know how we help, at least in the historic district, help homeowners keep an eye on that, because actually that happened to us. We, not brick, but we had the original piece of flagstone that was probably the entrance to our home. And when they redid Walnut 2-3 years ago, I actually was out there and I'm like, you are not taking this away. And so they shifted it to the side and had to concrete the steps. But if I wasn't out there, that would have been gone.
Right, and we weren't given, so you happened to be home, but we weren't given any notice as to when this was gonna happen.
No.
So,
Park your car on top of it.
yeah, I mean, we were obviously told that, the street's gonna be under construction and so on, and the village does notify you of that.
Yeah.
But there was no notification about these particular points.
Yeah.
Well, that's something that's important to know, because, I mean, I'm always documenting when I'm doing my personal restoration. I know my guys, they'll start taking things down very quick, like, oh, now my blood pressure starts, right? I stop them, and we're gonna, as we remove things, yeah, it slows down, but we number them, and then we put them back flat on find a spot, we got a staging area, and they're all like upside down, but everybody knows which way. But that's right, but for something like this, knowing now what we know, you could apply that just anywhere, whether it's streets, where there's some sort of a garden. I mean, if we're doing any upstairs, if they're going to dismantle the bell tower, somebody should go out there and just record exactly how it looks before, after they do it after, because then it's too late.
Right, yep.
Well, much to think about. I guess the watchword is vigilance, so that the cart doesn't get out in front of the horse. So that we have open communications about what village thoughts are as they're going forth and getting bids and things, so. Because I know, in talking to some friends that I have along Sixth Street, this is going to be a contentious situation.
That part is
And there are other
true.
people in town, frankly, that don't live on Sixth Street that feel very strongly about it also. So it isn't just the residents that are bordering this. I mean, it's part of the village in many respects, in many people's minds. But in any event, I guess more communication than less would be.
Right. Could I just add, I just wanted to add that we are producing 2 designs. One is that asphalt with brick intersections and entrances, and then the other will be reconstructing the entire area in brick. So we're designing for 2 possible outcomes. I can't speak to any of the particulars, I'm not in engineering, but I just wanted to make sure that it was known that there are going to be 2 designs, and we're still in the process.
So if I heard you correctly, there's no third thing where everything is in asphalt.
Correct.
It's either brick intersections and asphalt streets or all brick.
Those are the 2 designs we're moving forward with, yes.
And interestingly enough, and I'm sure you're aware of this, but you would never have asphalt in intersections anyway, because it rolls when cars go around the corner. So any intersection is going to be done in concrete, maybe asphalt on top of it, maybe brick on top of it, but it would never be asphalt anyway. So yeah, the difference would be the cost of the brick over the cost of the asphalt when it comes to the intersections, because you'd be doing that in concrete anyway.
So,
Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you, Kathy.
and SSA is the word that you're looking for, and that is something that is being,
How could we forget?
being discussed, and we are exploring what alternatives may be out there. So if Laurel has something that we're unaware of, or then please feel free to share it. ARPA funds are already being used for that. Our ARPA allotment, half was used on the standpipe, and the remaining half is being used on the Sixth Street project. Okay?
Thanks.
But it's conceivable you could have an SSA in the Robbins Historic Area, even though the street only went down Sixth Street or First Street. or
Right,
whatever.
we're, correct.
Right.
For instance, we
It
have an
isn't limited to the people that live on the street.
right, we have an SSA for the parking deck, and I could have it goes from Garfield to some street to the west, and then Hinsdale to some street to the south. I don't remember them
Yeah.
exactly, right? So those are all things we could consider.
Yeah, to my point, I think the brick streets are an asset to the village. That could be debated, I guess, by people up in Monroe School area if they wanted to. But certainly people that live in the historic Robbins area would agree that the streets are an asset to the historic area. So that broadens the scope of a potential SSA.
Can you
Certainly
remind me
brings
what
it out
SSA
into the
stands for
public for
again?
discussion.
Special service area.
Yeah.
And it was done, the Woodlands, if I'm remembering this correctly, is that you could participate in the SSA or you could make your contribution, and people were given either option.
You did it up on Birchwood
Yeah.
and the flood. And, yeah, it's-
There's several of them. A lot of them have been retired, but
Thank you.
I guess it was good I came.
Well, I was going to say,
Yes.
Kathleen, I'd like to extend an invitation to you, first of every month, Wednesday, right? Refreshments after the meeting.
You could have your meeting on the patio as some publicity for the 150th.
That would be nice. Yeah, yeah. You're a preservationist at heart. That's good. All right. Anything further we need to talk about? Mr. Elder, what do you think? You gonna enjoy your stay here?
I love it.
You're a boy. Good.
Give it a month.
We're glad to have you with us. I guess we're done for the evening. If I could have a motion for adjournment, please.
Move to adjourn?
Second.
Roll call vote, please. You want a voice vote?
Just do a voice vote.
Okay. Voice vote. All in favor?
you.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned.
Thank you.